The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
I'm going to keep my promise. Listen, folks, write some of this stuff down. Listen to this. Go back and get the podcast if you can't write it if you're driving. I told you I'd give you a quick Sheriff Arpaio Zulo investigation update. And here's the deal. You're going to have to listen. If you're intelligent, and 99.8% of our folks that listen to the show are very intelligent. The ones that don't fit that category are usually the Obama bots who are listening to every little word that drops off of my mouth so they can twist it, pervert it, and jack it around all over the Internet. They are not so intelligent.
They're the ones waiting for you to make that small mistake.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. and they help to keep me honest as well. But the rest of you are going to have to kind of listen carefully, kind of read in between the lines. But here's the deal. I haven't had time to post this yet because all of this just kind of came to me before we went on the air. But just go to Google and you can put in these words. Sheriff Joe Arpaio investigation was intended to discredit, judge says. That's the headlines of an article right out of Arizona, ABC 15, Arizona. Sheriff Arpaio's investigation was intended to discredit, a judge says. If you've been keeping up with this, you know that a federal judge has hauled Sheriff Joe Arpaio into his court under the pretense of Sheriff Arpaio failing to uphold some laws or skirting federal laws on immigration, et cetera, racial profiling, et cetera. But if you've been keeping up with this, you know that what has happened is the judge has outed Arpaio and a confidential informant that Arpaio had been doing some work with. The guy's first name is Dennis. I think his last name's escaped me right now, but I'll think of it in a moment. But has some connections to the federal government, CIA, et cetera, some information systems, government reams of government information. And in that information, the judge claimed was something pointing to the fact that Arpaio might have been investigating this judge. Listen, I don't have time to go into all the details. You need to read that article. Sheriff Joe Arpaio's investigation was intended to discredit. But when you read it, you're going to hear about this confidential informant and going to hear accusations of Arpaio using a private investigator on this judge, which is not true. Arpaio didn't run any investigation on this judge, but there are reams and reams, terabytes of reams of information that Arpaio and these guys have, and through this confidential informant and other things. But there was apparently, there were people involved in tracking information and collecting information on citizens, including judges and including law enforcement officials, et cetera, around the nation, coming right out of our government offices. And apparently Arpaio and Zulo are privy to a lot of that. And so, but see, this collection of that kind of information has now been deemed illegal, not for Arpaio and Zulo, but for the government to even do that. See? And so read the article and please remember this. These CIA documents that are being spoken of in this investigation, this court case, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office didn't make this stuff up. This stuff was uncovered through investigation. And you remember all this started with the birth certificate investigation. Okay. That's why Zulo some time back was talking about why this thing was going deep and dark, and there were some legal loopholes and hurdles they had to jump over, and earth-shattering evidence and information coming forth. Well, you're starting to wade around the edges of it now. The edges of it. Go read that article. Read between the lines. Hear what I'm saying. Remember what Zulo said. So, folks, this is what we were trying to tell you a long time ago. This is dark, and it gets deep, and it's going to get deeper and probably darker. So you're going to want to pay attention to this, and whatever we can tell you, we will as we move along. Let's go to the phone lines. Mike Smith, I'm sorry to cut into your time, but it was very important that I got that information out. It's good to have you on today.
Well, listen, you know, I get lots of questions, emails from people all day long. Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Well, I appreciate you taking a few moments there, Carl, to explain to the people where it's at.
Yeah. Well, I know in the PNN News and Ministry Network, you're the executive editor of that. I know you do get inundated with, you know, where's the big information? Well, you know, Zullo said many months ago that this was getting deep. It was getting dark. There were legal hurdles that they had to climb over. They had climbed over several and had put them behind them, but there were still a few ahead of them. And one of them now is Arpaio has been drug into federal court, as I said, under the auspices of, you know, look, you're not enforcing the laws properly. You're trying to skirt the federal laws, et cetera, et cetera. And, oh, by the way, what about this confidential informant? What about this CIA government employee? What about these reams of information? What about my name being involved in this? What about my wife's name? And he's turned it into something very, very personal, which is illegal, unethical at the very least, perhaps illegal for a judge to do. And there are all kinds of motions being filed right now in that. But I'm urging people, Mike, to go read that article, pay close attention to what's really being talked about, and remember the things that Zullo said on this show. And people will begin to have some aha moments. And that's all I can say right now. It'll get deeper later.
You know, Carl, you are an ex-lawman, and I've done quite a bit of work as a friend of the court, you know, representing people who are underprivileged and can't afford lawyers and perhaps have learning disabilities. So I've acted as a lawyer type several times for people. And, you know, we understand legal hurdles. Now imagine you and I have dealt with rather minuscule cases compared to, say, investigating the mafia. And here we have these people with the FBI and you know, Canadian services infiltrating crime syndicates and spending years and years with these people, you know, befriending them, becoming godfathers to their children, spending upwards of a decade investigating the mafia and so on, crime syndicates. And then finally, after a decade or more, dropping the hammer on them and finally making arrests. And you know, now even that is minuscule compared to investigating what Arpaio and Zullo are tasked with investigating. And people want it done right now. We want it done today. Tell us what you know. Reveal everything. And we're like, man, think about who we're talking about here. We're talking about the President of the United States. I would argue the most powerful man on earth.
Right. And the government agencies connected to him and under his direct authority, some of them law enforcement agencies. So, I mean, you know, this is huge stuff. And Zullo and Arpaio have said many times, I mean, Arpaio has said it on Fox News, Zullo has said it right here and on PNN and other media sources, that they know some really dark, deep, dirty stuff. And
right, and I get emails all the time. Well, well, Obama's going to be out by the time. Well, you know, I have never heard Zullo or Arpaio say that their intention was to oust a sitting president.
Right.
That has never been their stated goal. They're investigating a fraud against the American people, and it's up to Congress to do their job. And listen, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is the number one reason why now I don't have a vote in the American elections, but in 2016, if a senator or any congressman gets in 2016, I would say shame on you, America, for electing a man who neglected his duty to vet the President of the United States.
Yeah. No, you're right, because there is not a single congressman that I'm aware of that made any real effort, real screaming and hollering to vet the man that's in the White House, at least to the extent that they vetted John McCain with a Senate investigation. That's all I've ever asked for. Do the same thing with Barack Obama that you guys did to John McCain.
Right, and they already have a mountain of evidence now, do they not? I mean, did not you and Lieutenant Zullo, or rather, Commander Zullo, take evidence to CPAC to present to members of Congress?
Yeah.
Were you not snubbed by some of these people and say, look, I've got elections to win. I can't be bothered.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, Mike. I mean, we went into offices. We went up to Capitol Hill. We were at CPAC. We sat down in private rooms. We had private conversations. Some of them listened to us. Some of them were on board, and then various things happened. I think some of them got scared. I think some of them probably were threatened. I don't know, but just the way they acted. Others, as you said, looked us in the eye and said, look, I see what you have. I believe it. I understand it. I know something stinks to high heaven, but I'm not going to touch it because I want to run for office. I mean, it's like it's all about me and my little 2-year political office rather than about this nation. And now that was a couple of years ago at CPAC. Right. Look where we are now. Look what's happened in the Middle East. Look what's going on with ISIS. Look what's going on at our borders. Look what's going on with our medical system. And that's because, well, Alan West was one of them. Looked us in the eye and said, well, I want to run for office, and I don't want to talk about this, which is a reason why I would never vote for Alan West. That's just me. I mean, folks listening, if you want to support him, go ahead, but I know something about him you probably don't know. Well, you do now.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.